hoping how they got it. I wasn't. Yeah. So she was when you go in there, yes, I was surprised when I didn't realize that it was remote because they just put just as offsite employees, and so I just took that like not the corporate, like the main one.
Right.
Right. Oh, okay, I'm probably in like one of the satellite offices. No, like, no, that means you're offsite.
Were you like so happy?
I already like put myself up for like
Going to the office.
Yeah, thinking for someone who was going to be an option.
So get a break from the kids.
I can see inside of my houses, yeah. And so it wasn't I didn't know how I was going to do it. I really didn't.
Yeah. And what is your position there?
I can tell them.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Nice to meet all of you. I know we're kind of spread out here, so I might be a walker around, so I'll come to both sides. Good to see all of you. I might.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay, you're good. You're good. Grab the door here and get going just a second. Hi. Welcome. How are y'all feeling? The usual, good, cold. Thank you for the honest answer. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna have my mouse kind of weird. It's my clicker, so ignore the red light. But I'm gonna get started by just saying, hi, it's been a morning. You've been in a lot of sessions. I also stand between you and lunch, and I recognize that. And I'm talking about Tyson foods, so that's not gonna help me. But I do want to introduce myself first. I tend to want to start with the human, then I'll talk about the work. But I'm Alex Cawthon. Wife, I'm a mom, I have a 1-year-old, so I'm usually drinking some sort of caffeinated beverage, having a big girl job, all the things that kind of come with life that many of us are dealing with. I love to travel. I'm usually the go-to in the family for coordinating the chaos, trying to figure out what our travel plans are, if we're having a family vacation, what are we doing for the holidays, usually the go-to for that. So it's a lot of fun. That's typically what takes up my time. But something else that I think is super important, and I did this around the COVID years, that's what we're going to call them. But I kind of reasserted what are my personal values. And I think a lot of us had some soul searching during that time. And for me, I landed on my top values are going to be simplicity. So finding calm in the chaos. If it's overly complicated, something's wrong. Understanding. And I mean that from a curiosity standpoint. So I loved what we just heard in the last speech about finding that curiosity point and trying to find understanding there. People. I'm also a resident HR nerd, so I'm constantly trying to find understanding in that manner. But then the last thing is really around courage, is what I'm calling it. I've dabbled with a couple of different words there, but I found my voice, and some of us are still looking for that. I feel like I've found it, at least some. I'm still trying to work up courage here and there because of past conditionings that I've had, but that's me in a nutshell. So everything I do at work, everything I do at home, every big decision I make, I align them to those three. Sometimes people ask me, well, where's family, where's faith, where are those things? Those are given. So I don't even feel like I have to say those are given. Those come first, but then these are what I do everything else around. But outside of that, see if they'll click there. There we go. So who am I? What do I do for a living? So I'm a senior manager in talent development at Tyson. My past history has also been with JB Hunt just down the street. So many of you that are from here or you drove here from the airport, you passed it. It's another big Fortune 500 in the area, but I work in HR business partnering. So I was the HR lady, the good, the bad, and the funny. Come to HR, so lots of fun stories there, but I really enjoy helping leaders be more proactive in their approach of helping their teams, helping their business grow from a standpoint of thinking further ahead than the front of their nose. So I think we all in the HR front understand what I mean. But that's really where I got into training into this space, and I really love it. I am talking about talent management, so I have dabbled in other areas of talent, and I am in a talent management team. So I'm an offshoot. I focus on director and above, so executive level training and development. So I sit with a team that's a little outside of our traditional learning team. Education, I'm a U of A alum. Go Hawks. I'm also working on my master's, so I'm tired. Like I mentioned, 1-year-old master's and all those stuff that comes with life. But that's me. Now, you're probably going to ask yourself, who's Tyson? So many of us know, oops, can you go back for me one? Sorry, it got excited. Oops. Let's see if it'll, back up one. Oh, no, I remember. I added this slide last session, so I'll be human with you for a second. In the last session, I had a couple of thoughts that came to mind, and I want to ask you questions. So the first question is, where are you all from? So feel free to shout it out.
Springfield.
Salome, Springfield.
Rogers.
Rogers, what was that?
Greenwood.
Greenwood, okay.
Virginia.
Virginia, awesome. Did you fly in for this?
I did.
Welcome, very cool. First time in Arkansas or no?
No.
No? Okay, good. Very nice. Well, welcome. I like to understand where people are from. Outside of that, what are you interested in learning? So you came to this session with hopefully a goal of learning something. What was that?
I had an interest in pretty much everything that was listed on the agenda.
The
So
laundry list section there, yeah. We are going to cover that laundry list. Any specifics?
New trends. New trends or learnings.
Okay, new trends or learnings, we can do that. I tend to facilitate on the fly, so if you shout it out, I'll talk about it. Anything else?
I think pain points around training and the cultural aspects that you encounter in corporate and or in other facets is really interesting.
It is. We can talk about that. Okay. Well, if along the way you have a question, I'm pretty informal. Just shout it out as I go. My favorite question is, what's your favorite Tyson product? And if you're unsure what those can be, the chicken wings. The chicken wings, okay. I am a big chicken wing fan. These are some of our brands. So if you're not sure what is Tyson, most people think it's just the chicken in the frozen section. Not true. Favorites bacon. We have Bosco sticks, if you remember those in elementary school. And we've got Sara Lee. We have a lot of different sausage brands. We've got Ballpark, we've got Hillshire Farm, Jimmy Dean. And there's a new one we just added, which is Williams Sausage. That's not on here yet. But we have a lot of different brands that we dabble in. I think I eat most of these on the daily, and not because I work at Tyson. I did it beforehand. So we're in a lot of different areas of your grocery store. But for me, I'll tell you a funny story, and then we'll get into the actual meat of the conversation today. I did not mean that as a joke. I really didn't. There's a lot of funny Tyson puns. But when I was, I don't know, my younger years, I would love the Tyson chicken wings. Who said chicken wings? Yes. I loved their tequila lime chicken wings. And they were at the grocery store, and I got them all the time. My husband can tell you it was almost comical. I loved them so much. They, in about COVID years, again, we'll use that term, they went away. Couldn't find them. And I didn't work at Tyson at that point. And I thought, who do I need to call? Somebody knows somebody around here. I was so upset. And I was so upset. Anyway, so now I work at Tyson, and one of the first few things I asked somebody is, who works with the chicken wings? And they looked at me and they thought, why are you asking that? And I explained, and they laughed, and it was a bonding moment. It was fine. But literally 2 weekends ago, my husband and I were at Walmart. We're walking around, and you know the refrigerated bins or freezer bins? We're walking around, and I'm looking down, and I stop, and I see them, and my husband's facing me, and I went, oh my God. The chicken wings are back. So I think that's just a little funny story on the fact that I do love the Tyson product. I don't just work there. But I think it's just a fun story. We all have our foods. We all have our things that we like. But anyway, it's not the point of today. I thought you might appreciate it. All right, let's dig in. Let's see if this clicker will work. There we go. So the point of this session, why are we here? So I'm going to be talking about how you take the business's strategy and connect that to their business success using talent. So your people are your business. That is the whole point, right? You have to make sure that they're equipped, they're engaged, they have what they need, they're trained, all those things to make it work. We know that. That's kind of obvious stuff, right? We've got to start with the high level. The talent strategy has a couple of different buckets that fit up under that. Now, every company I've worked for, you can call these buckets whatever you want. But these are the 3 main buckets that typically revolve around how you manage talent. So you have to recruit them effectively, not going to dive into that as much today. That's its own wheelhouse, but I'm going to talk about when they get in the door. Develop, so provide them what they need. Make sure they have the appropriate training. Make sure that you have access to learning 24/7, because we're constantly on, I don't know about you, but I learn on the TikTok, I learn on the YouTube, I learn on the Google, right? Whatever you need to do, you have to give them some way to constantly be able to find that for themselves. You also have to provide some foundational learning. So stand-up classes like this. Yes, that is traditional learning, but you only remember 10% of what I'm going to tell you today. Sad for me, but that's how it works. So you have to provide other avenues for them to learn. You have to provide experiences. That's how it really sticks. You have to give them social learning opportunities, networking, cohorts, those sorts of things. And then finally, you have to enrich. So that's your comp, benefits, total rewards, engagement, experience, those sorts of things. Today, we're going to be talking about the talent management piece, which is that develop area. There's a sequence of events, and the team that I am on, these are the different sequence of events that we own. So it's me and 2 other senior managers. The first, her name is Emily Ward. I'm going to name drop them, because if you want to LinkedIn them, go ahead. But Emily Ward, she is over our succession and assessments group, so that kind of middle piece there. And then we have Josh Malone. He is over our goal setting and performance management. And then you have me, that's at the end there. Take all that data that they gather, and I analyze it with our talent analytics team, and then I figure out what do we need to do to lift our leaders at Tyson to get us where we need to go, so we can properly make sure that succession plan and pipeline is ready for their next move. Any questions just yet? Or is anything sticking out to you that you're saying, okay, that doesn't make sense? Saying some head nods on the right track. We'll keep going. So we have to start with the business's strategy. I think this is where sometimes we know we need to, but we don't do this well enough in business. We have to really speak their language. We have to understand what their challenges are, because we speak 2 different languages most of the time in HR. They speak numbers, and they speak in ROI, and they speak in P&Ls and elemental P, Qs, and like all these different acronyms that they throw at you, and you have to understand what they're saying in order to better understand how can I inject HR into that. But at Tyson, our strategy, you have to keep it high level, right? We didn't send NDAs. But we have to sustainably feed the world with our fastest growing protein brands, all those that I just showed you a minute ago, and many more probably as years go on, I'm sure. But that is our strategy, is to keep those growing as fast as possible. And one thing I will say is we have a big international focus right now, is how do we continue to push that forward? So that's a big focus of mine, so how to upskill our executives to do that well. And these are our 3 buckets from a business strategy. So we want to grow. So grow what we have, continue to push that market share. Our business, or grow our business by delivering superior value to our customers and consumers. So grow what we have, make sure that they are taken care of, and keep that going. Deliver fuel for growth and returns through commercial, operational, and financial excellence. And finally, it's sustain our company and our world for future generations. Now, I'm not expecting you to remember this, but the whole point of me showing you this slide is just to understand, if this is the direction of the company, we have to somehow align our talent strategy to that. This is our talent framework. So that recruit, develop, enrich, this is just a longer version of that. So we have to be able to get the right people in the door to support that. We have to have employee referrals. So I had somebody already hit me up on LinkedIn today saying, hey, I applied to Tyson, I'd love to chat. So we have to make sure we have the right people at the right time in the right chair with the right tools, which we'll get to. We have to have our values. And I don't know what happened with the rest of that, but we have to have our values aligned, make sure we understand what we're doing as a company. Does that fit into the mechanics that we want to build and the pillars that we have as an organization? And then we have psychometrics, reference checks, those sorts of things. So many companies will do an assessment. Maybe when you're doing your application and you take that personality piece, there's some fun science debate there, which we can talk to, but not today. And then we invite you into our family. So that onboarding process, we completely just revamped that at Tyson. We're in the first phases. So if you join our corporate team here at the Springdale office, you go through a whole new process, and it's beautiful. I'm so excited. I'm going to name drop all kinds of people today, but Miranda Reichert, she's about to have her first child, so she is busy and tired, but she has done that for us, and we're very excited about it. You have to have your, again, values and culture. So that culture piece is what we want to stand up there. So yes, we want to get you in the door, have the right people that align to those, but how do you maintain them and keep people engaged as to what are our values? That should really be ingrained. You have to have different team sessions to make sure that they have the ability to network and grow together. And then the piece I'm going to talk about the most is this middle. So it's where we strive to be our best, we reach for the stars, and what that means is we have to have the appropriate performance and goals set up so we can reach for those or exceed them. We have to make sure we provide learning opportunities to help people develop to exceed those goals. And all those pieces that fit up under there. I won't live here too long because that's what we're going to be talking about in the next few slides. But then finally, after you have that, you have to enrich them. That's those total rewards, pay benefits, bonuses, making sure that we're giving appropriate incentives based on behaviors we want to see, and then doing what matters most. So that's our people. So that is a core focus. That's actually why I joined Tyson from my prior organizations, is they walk the talk. I think that's something that's super important and feeds into my values. And then our corporate social responsibility initiatives, that's what CSR is. So making sure that we are appropriately thinking about our community. How are we giving back? What kinds of donation options can we provide? We have a matching option there if a team member wants to donate. There's a Tyson Match program. There's a couple of different things there. And then last but not least is our DEI initiatives. We have a VP over our diversity and inclusion efforts, and he is continuing to make that even bigger, better, and stronger with our different business resource groups or employee resource groups, as you might hear them. But we have different organizations there, and there's constant work going on to continue to stand that up, train our employees, train our managers, and do that more effectively. So that was a mouthful. That was a lot. But we're going to dig into that middle. And the reason we're digging here today is this is a whole new talent ecosystem. So this framework just got launched maybe less than a year ago at Tyson. We have this big shift. We've had this reorg. We've been in the news, so let's just talk about that for a second. But we are closing our Chicago and our Dakotas offices. So as Tyson grew, we acquired Hillshire, which is a Chicago-based organization. They had their headquarters still at the time. We're closing that. And then we also had our IBP, which is our fresh meats division. So if you go and find any pork or beef in the refrigerated section, that's our fresh meats area. And we're closing their office in the Dakotas, and we're bringing people here to Northwest Arkansas. It's a huge effort, huge effort. There's a lot of things that are impacting us now. We had the Emily Ward and Josh Malone I mentioned earlier. That was prior Aaron Huditz and I'm blanking, Sean. They were on our team, and they were unfortunately part of that, where they said, I'm not able to relocate my family, so we've had to restaff that. So there's a lot of impact going on in this complete change that we're going through. But the purpose, because everyone wants to understand why you're doing that. Purpose is to have a more aligned One Tyson culture and making sure we're breaking down those barriers so we can take those different cultures that were already there at the Hillshires and the IBPs and making that more focused on who are we as Tyson. Some of you may or may not know this, but we're completely redoing our campus as well. So there's going to be renovations going on over the next 2 years. But all that to say, there's a lot of change. That's the point of that. And if we're changing the business, what do we have to do? Not rhetorical. What do we do?
To connect to the people.
Yep, connect to the people, change our talent strategy. So let's take it. There it goes.
Yes.
It goes too fast. This way.
Okay, so at Tyson, I don't read very often. I hate reading quotes on a slide, but I'm going to do it once. So at Tyson, our purpose is to raise the world's expectations for how much good food can do. To accomplish this, we need to enable our team members to grow their capabilities, recognize their full potential. This begins with setting the right foundation and cadence for effective and transparent performance conversations and processes. To feed a changing world, it takes an incredible team. From the cutting board to the boardroom, every Tyson Foods team member plays an important role in our success, and we live by our core values of integrity, belonging, safety, and stewardship. So I want to read that to set the tone. That's the vibe, to use the new words. That's the feeling that we're trying to provide and executives are trying to push down to help us move to the same beat of the drum and how we go forward and how we connect it to that talent piece. Now you see this fun, colorful wheel or circle here. This just launched actually to our team members yesterday or 2 days ago. But the whole point of this is we've already had this kind of process at Tyson before. Managing our talent is not new, but what is new is we've had a silo effect. So we've had the IBPs and the Hillshire group and the poultry here and the McDonald's team and all these different groups kind of had their own thing going on. They had their own vision, they had their own culture, they had their own leadership training, they had all their own stuff. We're trying to centralize that to say this is the drumbeat we are following going forward, And it wasn't something that was brought down as a demand. It was something that was taking a lot of collaborative effort because we want to give appropriate recognition of we didn't become successful here today because of what we were doing or not doing. We know there was benefit to the way we were working, but we're trying to get bigger, better, faster, stronger as a company. So we're going to go through each of these cycles, but at the heart of everything we do are our core values, which I just told you, and then our leadership capabilities. Many of you might know these as competencies. We're calling them our capabilities. I didn't want to put them up on the screen, but I will tell you that some of them are classic. They're not earth-shattering. Leadership is leadership, but making sure that we keep that front of focus is important. So we have our adaptability capability. So that's your strategic thinking and being able to adapt and bend with the times. We've got innovation. We have, I always forget one of them, but that's okay. We'll circle back. Adaptable, innovation, delivering results. We also have team builder, developing others. And like I told you, always forget one. It's brand new. Give me a break. It's okay. But I'll think of it and let you know. But those are the 6, with one to grow on, that I think is super important for you to know because that's how we're building in our development options for our leaders. Now, with each of these seasons comes its own flavor. So season 1, that's our Q1. Our fiscal year starts in October. So I'm still adjusting to that myself, trying to do the month math. But our goal setting starts in October. So that is very classic. What are we trying to achieve? Executives set that tone for the year. It cascades down, all the way down to the frontline team member to understand how am I a part of that bigger goal? How do we exceed those goals that we're given? So we use goal setting conversations and feedback to set that foundation for the year. It helps our team members understand their role in Tyson's success. And then it sets expectations so we can hold each other accountable towards those goals. So very simple. Many companies do this. And again, not earth-shattering. But something I think that's important here is making sure that it's very specific. This is something that we've not done as well in the past, all the way down to the frontline team member. Again, super common is it's very robust up top, and then as it trickles down, it kind of gets lost in the minutia and the gray of the daily work. And it can feel like a check the box activity. If I go into our system, I put my goals, cool, we'll talk about it next year. That is something we're trying to get away from. So we are establishing check-ins throughout this whole cycle, which we'll talk about, on how do we keep that fresh in front of mind. In our second quarter, that's our career conversation. So we want to have intentional conversations throughout the year, but at least one where it's incredibly formal to say, what are your expectations of what you want to do with your career? Where do you want to go? What do you think your strengths are? What are the areas you want to continue to grow and work upon? So it discovers what motivates and engages your team member on the jobs. These are conversations between the manager and their employee. We want to align their unique interests with the needs of One Tyson. So One Tyson is something you'll hear me say a couple times and you'll see it on the screen. And the point of that is what I explained earlier. I'm trying to beat to that same drum. So that is kind of our moniker that we're using to keep that front of mind. And then we build development plans around the team members' career aspirations, and that creates opportunity for them to learn and grow. And I'll show you some more about that later on in the presentation, give you a sneak peek. Now that third quarter, that's where we have these mid-year touch points. I know you're like, well, it's Q3, how is it mid-year? At the beginning of Q3, we have our mid-year touch points. So these are two-way conversations that connect the team member on engagement and well-being. So it's trying to see the whole person. So yes, we have performance. Yes, we have goals. We want to talk about your development. What are you striving for? And that way we can also understand how you're connecting to their well-being overall. We do have a health and well-being team that's focused on this, and we are bringing on a vendor right now that will be a touch point for team members to reach out to on all things well-being. I'm super excited about that. And then we check in on our goals. So it's mid-year. So how are we moving towards our goals? Yes, it's probably a constant conversation in their monthlies or what have you, whatever cadence that manager has. But we at least need to do a gut check at mid-year. Has the goalpost moved? Those sorts of conversations. And then finally, identifying and understanding and highlighting internal talent for the future of Tyson leadership. So this is where our team starts to come into play a little more heavy. This is our busy season. So this is where we start to have calibration conversations, talent mapping conversations, etc. There goes. So I just alluded to calibrations and talent mapping, and what is that? So I'm going to talk through that a little bit. So at this time of year, this is when we start to engage from an HR perspective with our business leaders. We want to understand all of the talent within Tyson. We have to have that data for us to understand how we can support the business. So we start with understanding their performance. So where are they to their goals? How have they been performing over the last 3 years? So it's not just a snapshot in time. We do look at the last 3 years of an individual's performance. Sometimes things happen in the market and you can't control that. So we understand that and we take that into effect here. We analyze their potential. So I could put more on the screen, but again, we didn't send NDAs. But I'll tell you a few things. Now, I think what's important about the potential is we do have a new model that we are implementing this next year. We're working through those details now on our team. But there are 4 measures of potential that we'll be working with managers and training them on to assess their individual employees on those 4 metrics. One of them is curiosity. So I will say that. So it's I beamed in the back. I was sitting in the back of our last session, and as they're talking about curiosity, I'm back there thinking, oh my God, this is so exciting, because we're doing this. And the article with the cat on it, I know you remember the cat. That article we are actually using with our VP level talent in one of our courses that we put on with Harvard. So that's kind of fun. I loved that little tie-in and thought, okay, we're on the right track. So that's exciting. But one of the measures is curiosity. We're also looking at insight. So it's problem-solving ability. To what level do you do that? That curiosity piece, I'll go back for a second. We don't just look at curiosity for your own area. So there are different levels that we can measure you on. The highest level is, are you curious for curious sake? So are you excited to learn about, yes, the things that impact your goals, the things that impact somebody else's goals, the things that are just like, how do I change a tire? How do I understand what goes on in the poultry division? Am I curious in general? Because there are lower levels of curiosity where I care about the things that matter to me. That's more boxed in curiosity. We try to look for that open mind. Insights, problem solving, pretty straightforward. So how many different angles and avenues do you look at problems? And then we also talk about determination, so grit to get it done. How do you achieve that? So you can't just push people out of your way, right, to achieve that goal. So their behaviors align to that on how do you do that effectively and how do you influence. And then finally, engagement. So how much do you openly care to create networks and engage with your team members and people that are outside of your team, and it's not just for your own benefit. So those are the 4 levers, that we look at for our team members when we're managing and looking at their potential. Okay. And then the last thing we look at is their aspirations. Somebody said this to me once, and I thought it was brilliant, even though it's basic, is, yeah, Susie can be CEO one day. Does she want to? You see that in her. Does she want it? That wasn't CEO, being a little dramatic for effect. But I've also had people tell me, oh, you could do compensation. Please don't put me in compensation. Okay? Can I do it? Sure. Do I want to? That's a no. So you have to make sure that you understand what your team members want. So it's one thing if they have the potential, they perform well, do they want it? So we take all that into effect and we look at our different talent pools. Ingest our different talent pools. We're going to grow over time, but we really focus on, should you stay in your role and focus on where you are? Are you a person that we can tag as maybe growth within the function, so a future functional leader? Then we also look at those that are future enterprise leaders. A key differentiator is that curiosity measure on what makes you different between a function and enterprise. So if you're curious, that's usually a trigger. It doesn't mean that you can't be an enterprise leader if you have a lower level of curiosity. It just means that you're less likely to be effective at that higher level if you have a lower level of curiosity. So a lot of science there, we're working with different vendors on that, so it's not just us throwing caution to the wind. But we have a lot of different formulas, I'll call them, that go into how we analyze data. And then we take that into our calibration sessions after we have all of that and share that with leaders to say, hey, you put Susie in this talent pool. You put her in the enterprise talent pool, but she has a low level of curiosity. Help me understand. And it's not us saying you're wrong. It's just us saying, hey, do you think that's still appropriate for her? Tell me why. So we can have appropriate deep conversations with leadership on who the future of Tyson is. And then we go into succession planning. So like I just talked about Susie, we'll keep up with her for a minute. If we say, yes, that's who we really want, then we can say, okay, for her to be even more effective, we need to up that curiosity a bit. Now, usually that's innate to a person, but we can supply some development and opportunities for them, similar to, yes, that article is just a minute piece that we could give them. But we have to continue to encourage them and see the why behind how curiosity is going to help stand them up and be a better future leader for the organization. I'm going to stop here for a second. Any questions on those? Oh, 10 questions, okay.
Yep.
What, do you have a specific tool that measures curiosity or those other four?
So there are a couple of ways we can do it. So there are different tools that the vendor has offered to us, but it's mostly through leader training and making sure that they understand each of those, giving them very clear documentation, resources, office hours for them to come ask us questions, and then walking them through a very simple model so they can appropriately select their level 3 in curiosity, and it gives them behaviors and definitions of this is what a level 3 looks like. And that's why we have the calibration sessions as well, is to gut check that and say, hey, Susie and Jim, they're both in the same box. Does that make sense? Yes or no? And we can have those deeper conversations. And I will say, I just took a sneak peek at the time, so I'm going to keep this moving for a second and we'll get into questions. But that last quarter is really for us to gear up for year-end performance reviews. So this is when we get back into, okay, yes, you still have to perform to the job. That is base level. All the other things are the extra, right? How have we performed? What is missing? Did we miss the goal? Why? What training do we need to help get you there? Those sorts of aspects. And then finally, we look for those development areas, which is this last piece that I'll talk about. Oh, that's weird. There we go. So development planning. So some of this is also basic. Someone mentioned wanting to hear more about development and what kind of gets in the way. Now the different areas we look at are really how do you lead yourself? How do you lead others around you? So that can be a first-time manager, or how do you take that lead role, if you will. And then as you grow, you get to a place where you start leading leaders, which is a whole new ballgame, and really where I come into play at Tyson on how do we get you ready for that aspect, because it is very different. And then you get into leading the enterprise. So that is going to be more high-level strategic thinking, getting ready for board meetings, those sorts of aspects. So these are very different tiers of learning that we have to supply resources for. And they typically fall into one of these buckets at Tyson. We have our traditional classroom learnings, of course. We have several of those, which are your traditional Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We have a VP and director level high potential individual course of 50 directors and 50 VPs go through their respective classes a year. And those are done with other vendors such as DDI or Harvard and those sorts of things. And then we have coaching opportunities. So we have a 3-tiered approach at Tyson. So we have our executive level coaching. We have our kind of director to VP, SVP level coaching. And then we have our anything below director, basically. So those are more talent pool coachings because it's more scalable. We have mentorship opportunities. We have rotation programs, stretch assignments. Then the one I really want to stick on is that free education. There are no handcuffs, which I think is super interesting to our model at Tyson. Those companies you go to and they handcuff you for 3 years or 5 years or whatever, or you have to pay it back. We don't do that, which I think is crazy, but I love it because I'm going to get my master's through it. So whatever they need to do, but the purpose for Tyson is we want to educate and upskill our future leaders and team members in the organization. We also have on-demand learning. We use LinkedIn Learning. We just stood that up very recently. We have networking opportunities that we inject. We have different impact projects that we can put pods of leaders throughout the company together and on to have the best minds on the hardest projects. And then finally, we have our development plan. Nothing flashy. You've probably seen something like this before. So it focuses on those 3 different areas of having the right experiences. How are you going to find a coach or a mentor, an accountability partner that you can have conversations with, review the tapes, if you will, kind of analogy. And then finally, the formal learning. So your formal learning or your classrooms, your articles, your books, your podcasts, that should only be about 10% of the things you focus on. It should be a springboard to go have those impactful conversations and have those experiences to get your hands dirty and learn. Questions?
We have a question
Yeah.
online. Chris, you have a question?
Hi, yes, I'm curious, when you're looking at director level leaders and above, how do you,
Perhaps put it in chat, Chris, we can't hear you.
Oh. So I love it. It sounds wonderful. I know it's new, so you may not have the answer to this.
Okay.
How well are your middle managers accepting this? Because usually that's where we lose it. Is it middle management?
Yeah, I call it the messy middle, magic middle, purgatory, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, so we're intentionally thinking of them. So I actually was given the project 2 days ago, so my priorities have shifted, but to think of those things. So as we're trying to figure out how we roll this out, yes, you can do top-down approach. That works so far, to your point, but we have to help that middle management understand the why behind it, have appropriate conversations within their staff meetings to help people understand the impact this is going to have, how's it going to impact you as an individual on my team, those sorts of conversations. I'll give you one example of something we're doing. So we're going to be doing these micro courses or lunch and learns, whatever you want to call them, but they're going to be 30 minutes to 45 minutes long once a month. So our new capabilities that I mentioned, between basically now and through the end of the year, once a month, we're going to have a topic of one of those. So the first one will be an introduction. We'll have leadership come in and speak and talk about the impact this is going to have, kind of town hall style. It'll be for all people leaders to start. We'll roll it out to all team members, those sorts of things. But each month we'll focus on one of them, and it's just a short micro burst learning. Excuse me. First 5 minutes will be somebody like myself doing kind of housekeeping items of welcome. Here's why we're here. I'm going to introduce our leader. They'll speak. So it'll be talk show style, similar to maybe the panel we'll have later on. We know that people don't want to listen to us for HR. Nobody likes us. It's fine. We know. But we want them to hear from their leadership. That's where the impact comes from, on how does this really impact you and your job. So we're going to find those high potential, passionate about talent individuals that are at that messy middle, magic middle, whatever you want to call it, and have them come in and talk on the panel about how they're going to really make this work for them and their team. So we want to make it real. It can sound fun, to your point, and fluffy and great, but how do you make it real? So that's what those sessions are going to be about. You're welcome. Any other questions?
You mentioned about moving your employees from Chicago and the current location to North Lake Arkansas.
Yep.
My question is, why North Lake Arkansas and why now?
Yeah, great question. So why Northwest Arkansas? I think I'm not as privy to some of these conversations behind closed doors, but I can make some pretty healthy assumptions on. We were founded here. The family still is chairman and owner here, right? So I think there's some pieces to that on some probably obvious reasons. I also know that this area is probably lucrative from a business standpoint. You also have some other hefty individuals in that corporate arena up here too. But I think why now? It comes from a place of, I'll tell you just from historics of me living in this area and growing up, is this has been a rumble since I was in high school. Of, oh, Tyson has a Chicago office. Does that make sense? Or, oh, I've heard my friends talk about their family that worked at Tyson, and when is that going to happen one day? When are they all going to come to Springdale? So I think it's been a rumble for a long time. Now, why now? Maybe your question on that is, I think there's been this directive because we're post-COVID era. There's a lot of businesses that are doing this kind of reevaluation of how they do business. There's this reevaluation of an employee experience. There's a lot of different aspects that are coming into play. And I think our board and leadership team has decided that we've put this off too long. It's time for us to come together, be one Tyson. We have acquired companies and kind of said, continue doing business how you were. So that's caused maybe a decade-ish or more worth of silo effect. And we have to figure out, okay, maybe we didn't do it right initially. So we have to figure out how do we do it right now based on the environment and market that we're in as far as employee experience, how we continue to push through as a company, how we innovate, how we create more career opportunities. Because if you have that silo effect, you have to cross-pollinate between departments. And it's very hard to get people to move to Arkansas or to Chicago or to wherever, right? So I think there's a couple of different reasons.
Let me get to it. Chris, can you hear us now? Oh, awesome.
All right, when you look at director level and above leaders, you connect the development expectations with the recruiting strategy, interviewing techniques. Yes, I had this conversation with my boss yesterday, actually, on how do we effectively do that. So as we roll it through the company, we were having a conversation of we can't forget that if this is the new expectation, you have to set that with individuals that are candidates coming in. So that is a two-pronged approach, six-pronged, whatever prong. There's a lot of different avenues here. But one of them is going to be working with our talent acquisition leadership and saying, these are our new capabilities. This is how we're going to measure success as a leader and team member within Tyson. These are the ways that we should then evaluate our candidates coming in the door. Good question. Any other questions? No, we went over a little bit. Okay. Well, I will say I'd love to connect with you So if you'd like, my LinkedIn is at that QR code. If you want to have more coffee chats or anything like that, just reach out to me. More than happy to do it. I enjoyed getting to speak with you. Stay curious. I loved that in our last session, and we play with that too. So come find me if you want to talk. Bye.